We are going to kick off hour number 2 with a guy who has been with us for a couple of years now, helping us out with the NFL draft. Kennedy Paynter from drafttech.com does a terrific job of projecting. That's all you can do when it comes to these draft classes, but he's going to focus on Alabama prospects with us, and he does a great job doing that. And also, he has special interest in the Washington Redskins. That's his team. He does some stuff for hogshaven.com, and we know Washington and Alabama go together when it comes to the NFL draft, that's for sure. Good morning, Kennedy. How are you?
Good morning, Gary. How you doing?
Doing really well. Good to have you back on. Alabama, as always, figures heavily in this upcoming NFL draft. Let's start with your projections where you think these guys are going to go in terms of rounds with these 7 underclassmen. And we'll start with the 2 most highly publicized. Quinnen Williams, interior defensive lineman, as a redshirt sophomore, third-year sophomore, absolutely blew up in 2018. His hands, his point of his power at the point of attack, the ability to accelerate, to take on multiple blockers. He was just dominant, particularly I would say over the first 8 or 10 games of the season. There has been some talk that he could even potentially go number 1 overall, although I think a top 5 pick at this point seems safe from my vantage point. What do you see from Quinnen Williams?
You said it very well there. I have him in the top 5. The only way I can see him going number 1 overall would be if Nick Bosa's medicals don't check out. But Quinnen Williams is, he's kind of a mix between Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, the last 2 Bama defensive linemen to come out. He's bigger than Jonathan Allen, but plays very similarly. He has great instincts, uses his hands really well. He can split double teams, and he can also hold those double teams. He's just an impressive player. He's exactly what you look for these days in a defensive tackle. I think, the Aaron Donald type that can rush to the passer also gets exposed against the run. So I think we're trying to, in the NFL, we're seeing a trend towards the guys that can do a little bit of both, and he can do that. Yeah,
no doubt. I mean, just so quick for that size. I think he's been described as a 290-pound bar of soap because he's so hard for linemen to get their hands on him. On the offensive side of the ball, Alabama has one of the top tackles in the draft and potentially, I think, could play guard at the next level. But Jonah Williams started as a freshman at right tackle for Alabama, started the last 2 seasons at left tackle. He's coming out early. Now, there does seem to be, as I said, some discussion on whether or not he'll be a tackle or a guard. But either way, he figures as a sure first-rounder, doesn't he?
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. There's a lot of teams in the top 10 that need a tackle or a guard. The offensive lines that are premium in the NFL right now, and there's a huge shortage of it. So at either spot, guard or tackle, I think he'd be fine. He got, a little bit criticized because of the one play in the national championship game where he got bowled over by Clelin Ferrell. But, for the rest of the game, he played very well. Ferrell got him a couple of times on inside moves. But Williams did a great job of recovering, and that's what you look for in the NFL. You're not always going to win immediately, and it's those guys that can recover that are really valuable. So I think he could be a dominant guard, and I think he could be a serviceable to good tackle. It just depends on what your team's need is and kind of where you want to put him.
All right, so very versatile, which is a good thing. Josh Jacobs is an interesting player because he didn't have a lot of offers coming out of high school. Alabama got on him there at Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he committed and signed and just became a very valuable player, a versatile player. And then this year played terrific football. Had he had more carries, there's no telling what he could have done. But I'm seeing where most of the draft folks project him to be the first running back off the board. You agree with that?
Yeah, it's funny. It was his teammate, Damian Harris, before that. And all of a sudden, Josh Jacobs kind of exploded, I guess, mid-November. He kind of came on the scene. He only has 252 touches, which seems to the Alabama fans, they wanted him to have more touches. But NFL teams love that. He doesn't have a whole lot of tread. And he's coming in. He can catch the ball. He's explosive. He's got that low center of gravity and that impressive build. But he's also quick and can really get in the open field and do damage. So I do think he's going to be the first pick. I don't think he's going to be in the first round. I don't see anybody being a first-round pick this year unless it's late in the draft. But I think second round easily, I think he'll be the top first, if not second, running back off the board.
Yeah, I'd love to see him go in that late first round. But you're right. This could be one of those years where we don't have a back go in the first round at all. Irv Smith Jr. is coming out. Of course, his dad played in the NFL. Terrific athletic, pass-catching tight end. Some criticism of his blocking, although he's certainly big enough and strong enough to hold the point of attack. Probably going to be the first or second tight end taken. Is there a chance that Irv Smith Jr. could go in the first round?
I don't think so. He's my third-ranked tight end behind the two Iowa guys, Fant and Hawkinson. I think that he actually blocks better than he's given credit for. He's not, of course, the best blocker, but he's much better than some of these guys that we've seen come out recently that are basically just slot receivers, big slot receivers. So I think that he is going to be more versatile. He'll be able to play that Y spot where it's the traditional Jason Witten type tight end if he fills out a little bit better and works on his blocking technique. I like him a lot, and I think the league is actually going back towards that kind of tight end that can be an inline blocker with all the 11 personnel that the Rams and the Patriots are having so much success with. So I think that he will be picked high and he'll be used well in the NFL, but I do think that Fant, just because of his athleticism and his size and his pass catching ability, might be ahead. And then Hawkinson he does both. He's a great blocker and he can really catch the ball. So I think Irv Smith, top of the second round, probably, but I don't think he'll be in the first.
Kennedy Paynter from DraftTech.com and HogsHaven.com discussing the upcoming Alabama players in the NFL draft. We're talking about the juniors now that come out early and in redshirt sophomore Quentin Williams' case coming out as a third-year sophomore. Two more juniors I want to cover. Deontay Thompson, the safety. First half of the season, this seemed like a no-brainer. There were guys lauding his range and his speed and his ability to close on the ball, and you were hearing, top 15 overall pick. That changed a little bit in the second half of the season, and there was some question as to whether or not he might come back for another year at Alabama. He made the decision to come out. What do you see from Deontay Thompson? Is he a first rounder, or is he a guy that's going to slip into the second round?
I think he's going to be a first rounder. He's my number 2 ranked safety, but it's very close. Nasir Adderley from Delaware. He's actually playing in the Senior Bowl currently and doing very well. He's my number 1 guy, but I really like Thompson. He can play free safety. He can also play some strong. He can match up on tight ends. He's got a little bit of that Minkah Fitzpatrick to him. He's a different player, but he's got that versatility. I really like him. I think that he's the new age safety that can do everything that you want him to do. He can be that bracket type coverage that the Patriots run as well. So I like him. I don't think that there's really anything he can't do. And anybody coming out of Alabama knows how to play hard and knows how to play assignment sound. So I think he's going to be a first-round pick.
All right, the final junior, Mack Wilson, and opinions are all over the place on this guy. There's no doubt he has a lot of athletic ability. He's fast. He's good in pass coverage because he's so athletic. But he was hit and miss this past season, quite frankly. You would watch games where you thought, man, this guy's terrific. In other games where he was either out of position or he missed tackles. I thought he would come back for his senior year. I really did. He made the decision to come out. So I think he's a hard guy to get a read on because you look at his athletic ability and you probably want to rate him high, and then you look at his actual production or lack of there at times, and you probably lower him some. What do you got on Mack Wilson?
I really like Mack Wilson. I think he needs to be protected a little bit, because like you said, he can find himself out of position sometimes. But he's a young linebacker, and that's what a lot of these athletic young linebackers, they rely on that speed and their movement skills rather than really necessarily sticking to their assignment. And sometimes that's hard for the younger players to learn. I like him a lot. I think he's a weak side linebacker. He's not big enough to play in the middle in the 3-4, or I wouldn't like him to be in the middle in a 4-3 either. I think he's a weak side linebacker. He can run and chase, and he can play some coverage on tight ends and maybe slot receivers and running backs. I think he'll do a great job there. 6 interceptions for a linebacker in 2 years is a lot. So I think that he covers pretty well, and I think that if NFL teams use him as that sort of off-ball linebacker, I think he'll have some success. I have him probably about third round. Okay, not bad. All right, good look for these Alabama juniors. You had them all at least going in the first 3 rounds. So you want to be a first rounder, but if you come out early, you probably at least need to go by the third round to really justify coming out. And looks like these guys have made good choices. Let's get to some of these seniors. Let's start with a couple that are playing in the Senior Bowl. Center Ross Pierce-Baker. He played guard. He played center. He's smart. Maybe not as athletic as you would like. What grade do you have on him? I have a third, fourth on him. I also think it depends on how he tests as well. A lot of these guards, center guards now, they're a little bit more athletic, so it'll be interesting to see in the combine how his movement skills are and how he kind of takes the coaching there. He could move up or he could move down a little bit, but either way, I think he's going to be a solid NFL guard. He reminds me of Cody Whitehair, actually, came out of, I believe, Nevada a few years ago, plays for the Bears. So he is just that guy that's going to be, he's very smart. He knows how to pass off blocks. He knows his assignments well. He can also, as a center, he's good at pointing out blitzes and communicating with the line. So I think he'll go late third, early fourth round, maybe with his compensatory picks in there. But I think he'll be a solid pro for a while as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, and he's also got a great clubhouse presence for your team. He's a terrific young man. Isaiah Buggs, big defensive lineman. 3 technique, 4 technique. He could probably play both. Came out of junior college. Now, he's a guy that, I think Alabama might have listed him at 6'5" or so. He's probably closer to 6'3", but he's a big physical kid, really good at holding the point of attack, probably could improve on his pass rush skills. Defensive linemen are at a premium in this league. What grade do you have on Isaiah Buggs?
I actually really like him. I think I'm higher on him than some people are. And if you just look at the track record of Alabama linemen in the league, it's very good. Even the guys that they said, he's just a, Jaron Reed type player. He can only stop the run. He's been playing very well. So I think Buggs, he's a little bit of a tweener. I like him as a 5 tech and a 3-4.
Okay.
Just really kind of holding the point of attack. It would be tough for him to play a 1 technique. He's not quite big enough. But I think that if he can be a rotational player in the defensive line, I think he could do really well.
I do too. I like him a lot. I think he's also got that disposition. I mean, he doesn't mind mixing it up and getting nasty. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
He'll mix it up.
All those Alabama defensive linemen, man, they have that mean streak.
What about Christian Miller? This is a guy who, he has been, let's just say it, he's been injury prone. He's built his body up. He's kind of a slender guy. But when he was healthy this year, he was a heck of a pass rusher, another one of these high character kids. We know if you can get to the quarterback in the NFL, you can find a spot. I don't know that he will, and maybe you'll disagree. I look at him more as a situational guy. I don't know that he'd ever be a full-time player on a defense in the National Football League, but I think he's got something to offer. What do you see from Christian Miller?
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of the situation, not the player, but the situation that Sean Deion Hamilton was in last year. Just injury bug basically through his career. Was never really totally healthy. Even when he played, a lot of times he wasn't healthy. I do like his flexibility coming around the edge. I mean, he can really bend, and he's pretty quick around the edge. But he is kind of filled out his frame, and he's still not that heavy to be an edge player unless he's an outside linebacker. So like you said, I think he could be a rotational guy and maybe a pass rush guy. Those players usually 5th, 6th round, depending on how his medicals check out. Same thing for his teammate Jennings. I think that Jennings might be more of a 4-3 edge guy on the left defensive end because he's gotten a little thicker since his knee injury, so he's going to be more of that run stuffing guy on the edge. He doesn't have a lot of that quickness left. But both of those guys, I would think 5th or 6th round. And again, Alabama guys are just going to get drafted because they're from Alabama and they have success in the league across the board.
All right, I want to ask you about a couple more guys, and they're probably fringe guys as far as even getting drafted, and you may not have a grade on them because of that, but I do want to ask you about the senior tight end, Hell Hinches, who has been a really good college football player. I don't know that he's, if he's got a chance to play in the NFL or not. A little slow, but, has decent hands, okay blocker. Any possibility of Hell Hinches, even as a free agent, getting a crack next year in an NFL camp?
I mean, he'll definitely be in a camp. He's not very big. He's if you're going to be the less athletic type tight end, you really want to be a little more rocked up than he is. He might get there, but like you said, he can block well. So if he could have kind of a similar role to a guy like Logan Paulson, who caught on with his own running scheme, where you're really every single time you're on the field, you're just giving away that you're running the ball. So Logan Paulson type role, where if he can be a good enough blocker, he can have an NFL career, but that's going to be where he's going to have to make his hay.
What about Lester Cotton, offensive guard? He played in a lot of games at Alabama. He actually got beat out this year as a senior midway through the season by Deontay Brown, but Deontay Brown got some trouble. He got back in there. Big physical kid. I mean, physically, he's a massive guy, very inconsistent. spotty in pass protection. What do you know about Lester Cotton?
He needs to play in a phone booth for sure. He needs to be in a power run scheme if he's going to make it. I still think that he'll be a priority free agent if he's not drafted. A lot of these guys, offensive linemen are going to have flyers taken on them in the 6th and 7th round. But he's definitely a phone booth player. He's decent when he doesn't have to play in space. So if he's blocking straight ahead, I think he's going to be okay. And like we said, there's a huge shortage of offensive linemen in the NFL. So even marginal players at big schools like Alabama are going to get a shot because, if you're playing in that program, then you have some talent and you have that size that's required for the NFL.
Kennedy Paynter from drafttech.com and hogshaven.com, where he covers the Redskins, with us here on the Bud Light Hotline. And we're wrapping up with Kennedy, but a couple more topics. And I missed an underclassman. I'm looking at my list now, and I guess because I kind of put him in a different category because I was really surprised that Savion Smith, the corner, decided to come out. But I think his thinking was he might not even start next year if he comes back to Alabama with Trayvon Diggs returning. So he decided to go ahead and test the waters now with a decent season under his belt. At times he was good, and at other times, as we saw in the national championship game, he just got toasted. But he's got some size and he's got some skills. So where do you project Savion Smith?
I think he's a 7th round, 6th round, 7th round guy. I think that the general success of the Alabama defensive backs is going to help him. Levi Wallace is a guy that I really liked last year. They're different players. Levi Wallace was kind of.
You were right on Levi Wallace because he turned out to be a steal for the Bills as a free agent.
Absolutely. So I think he might end up in the same situation, but any player that has started at Alabama is going to get a shot somewhere, and he's going to do well. I mean, even Deshaun Hand last year, I was high on him. People weren't as high. He dropped in the draft, and he played great for the Lions. So backups at Alabama end up playing in the NFL. Right. So I really think that he came out. I think that he'll make a roster, whether he's drafted late or not. But he has enough skill, and he's disciplined enough that he can. And like you said, his size is an advantage as well to either be a late pick or make a roster as a free agent.
All right. Before we wrap it up with Kennedy, we are going to get his thoughts. Pardon me, on Kyler Murray in just a moment. But you cover the Skins. All these guys that we've covered. I mean, with Washington's track record here with Alabama defensive players, what are the odds that another defensive player from Alabama gets drafted this year by the Redskins, or maybe even an offensive player this year? Yeah, well, I tweeted it out about a half an hour ago. That my followers should tune in because we're going to draft at least one of these guys, and we just have, and it's not a bad idea. Like I said, they're disciplined, they know how to play hard, and they're in a program that an NFL program should emulate, really. So. They're usually not bad picks. We have Reuben Foster now as well. So we have 7 guys under the age of 27 that are, all Alabama defenders. So I think we'll pick one. We need a safety. Deontay Thompson, if we move back in the first round, I think we're going to pick a quarterback. But if we don't take a quarterback, he's an option. We also need a guard. So if we decide to go line and Williams is still there, he'd be a great pick at 15. So I almost guarantee you that we will be taking an Alabama player in April. All right, speaking of Reuben, what's the latest there? I know he's going to be facing some type of suspension. Nobody questions his talent. Once again, those charges were dropped in Tampa by that. It's a combustible relationship, no doubt about that. But once his suspension is served, his pending suspension, which I think is I'm pretty confident in saying that he's going to miss some time. But his talent, the Redskins picked him up, and it looks like at some point this season he'll be eligible to play. You think he cracks that lineup?
If he can play, absolutely. He's far better than the middle linebackers that we have. That's been an area of struggle for us. We don't have the speed, and then the players that we do have are often overrunning plays. Sean Deion Hamilton actually ended up starting the last 3 games of the season, and he played very well. So I think that he will start this coming year, and it could be Reuben Foster next to him if he's cleared and healthy. And again, as the Redskins PR has said, he has a long way to go before he puts a jersey on.
Right.
So as long as he checks all the boxes and really shows them that he's going to be part of their program and buy in, he will be definitely a force in the middle for us.
Yeah, if he can just if he can just get on the field, if he can just keep himself out of trouble, that's his safe haven. And on the football field, man, he's a dynamic guy. All right, Kyler Murray. Alabama fans saw him up close in the Orange Bowl. What a story. This time last year, you knew he was going to play a year quarterback, but everybody expected him to be a major league, in the system with the A's. And he, in June was the was the ninth overall pick of the first round. It seemed like he was going to have a fun year playing quarterback, but nobody, I think, anticipated that he would blow up the way that he did and now be a potential a first-round pick. I think that he is going to be a first-round pick. You agree with that? If he goes on and decides to play football, what do you see from this guy? Is he a guy that, with the way the game's changed, even at probably under 5'10", is he going to be able to play quarterback in the National Football League, in your opinion?
I think he will. Well, it always depends with quarterbacks. It depends where they land. You never know what would have happened to, say, David Carr if he didn't land with the Texans and get sacked 42 times in his first season. So you never really know if a player is going to succeed, because it really depends on what system they land in, how stable is the organization, all that kind of thing. But in a vacuum, yes, I think that he can play. Everyone compares him to Russell Wilson because of the height, but I compare him to Russell Wilson because of the baseball background. He can throw from different arm angles, different platforms. He has that sort of decision-making where he can almost see angles how he can throw the ball on the run, which is sort of a baseball mentality. He also protects himself very well. So Russell Wilson isn't the biggest guy, but he protects himself from taking hits with sliding. So they're very similar athletes. He is 25 pounds lighter, though, than Russell Wilson, and that's always going to be the worry, if he can stay healthy. But if you look in college, he did not take a whole lot of big hits because he was getting down before the hits came. So I do think that he can play, especially now with Mahomes having so much success. The worry about him was he's sort of a backyard football player who doesn't have consistent mechanics, and that's exactly what Kyler Murray is. So I think in the right system, he's a dynamic talent, obviously. He has tremendous speed. He's creative. He can get out of the pocket. He's an exciting player as long as he lands with somebody who's going to use him in a safe way for him, and also, use him in a way that lends to his success. We don't want him to drop back in the pocket, 7-step drops every down. So he just needs to land in the right spot.
Well, I just don't want to let you go. I mean, it's just so hard because I got these things in categories, and I missed one more guy from Alabama. I don't know how, but Damien Harris, of course, the senior running back, who a lot of people thought would come out last year. Maybe overshadowed a little bit this year by Josh Jacobs, but Damien Harris is a quality running back. Where do you see him going?
I think he's going to be second or third round. I really like him. He's kind of that prototype old school running back. If you go back 15 years or so, he's got, he's 5'11", 215, just low center of gravity is exactly what you look for. And I remember when I was first looking at draft things, he would be a prototype there. He's great in pass pro as well, which helps, more than you would think. A lot of these guys coming out are not good in pass pro, so he's going to be the fact that he can be on the field all three downs is really going to help his draft stock as well. So it depends on his time as well. If he runs a really good time, he could jump up into the late first round, early second round. With a lot of these running backs, the testing really does end up mattering in the end.
Yeah, I'm still confused on why he skipped the Senior Bowl, but that's was his call. All right, let's wrap this thing up, and you've provided us with some great insight this morning at drafttech.com and your work with the Redskins. Tell the listeners how they can follow you on Twitter and how they can get involved with some of your draft information.
Sure. My Twitter handle is Kennedy_Paynter, and you can find me on Draft Tech. We have a new CMD is what we call it. It's our computer program that runs our mock drafts. A new one comes out every Wednesday, so you can check that out. Right now we have first and second round picks, both with little blurbs attached, but we do have a full 7-round mock that is reloaded every week. And then Hogs Haven, I write for them now and then, usually film study sessions. I'll be gearing up for a few more of those with some prospects coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Super duper. Great stuff. Enjoyed it, Kennedy. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Sounds great. Take care.